Welcome to our podcast. I'm Elina.
And I am Sarah, and we're so excited to have you here.
Today, we really wanted to talk a bit more about self love. As we were listening to our previous episode, we felt like there was so much more to talk about and really around self blame and judging ourselves, being critical of ourselves, and really feeling a lot of guilt and shame around all sorts of things. And we wanted to dive a bit deeper into that as it's such a big part of self love. One of the biggest things I do for myself is not being constantly critical anymore and really recognizing when I'm in that kind of critical or judgy mode and really seeing that there's no like purpose to this. And I feel like that's one of the most self-loving things I've been doing lately is to seeing when my perfectionism plays up or when my people pleasing happens or whenever other things happen that maybe I'm just not super proud of, or, it's so easy in this world to be very critical of ourselves, also of others, but really towards ourselves. And I think, especially if you're listening to this podcast and you're in some way relating to what we're sharing, then I think you can find yourself in how you're judging yourself way more than is necessary. And I think, especially as women, we're so programmed to take the blame and to question ourselves. And especially as people pleasers, which is what our society has learned women to do in general, right? Like women are celebrated for being overgiving and even giving like there's like this saying, right, of giving your own shirts away and like just not taking anything for yourself, and that's somehow like the ultimate goal, and like you get so much praise for that while it's actually really abusive towards yourself, and it's often the cause of a lot of unhappiness and resentment, and it's not a great place to be in, right, to always be giving. And I think overgiving is definitely a big like way to recognize that it's time to prioritize yourself a bit more. But yeah, we wanted to dive into this and talk a bit more about being critical and how to maybe start to be a bit more gentle, a bit more acceptance towards ourselves, and how that can really change your life.
Beautiful. And I love speaking about judgment because I'm Italian. I come from Italy. And there's a big culture of just looking around at others and judging them. I remember growing up with wonderful parents, but it was embedded in my family's culture to just comment on other people constantly, how they were looking, how they were speaking. We would watch TV and just comment on how people were and what they were doing, what was right and what was absolutely wrong and what was super inappropriate. And I remembered already as a child feeling so blocked. My brain was registering. So this means that all these things my parents are finding shameful, I should remember and avoid doing for the rest of my life. It was like I was taking little notes as I was growing up of all the things that were accepted and all the things that were unacceptable. And that played a big part in how my personality developed. I was speaking yesterday with my boyfriend and remembering about some childhood memories. And I was like this super outgoing child that would be sometimes very rebellious and would like plan these crazy initiatives with other kids. And I tuned it down so much that I've been like this little angel child for the rest of my childhood. And I was wondering, like, where did it change? And I recognized the root cause in my parents judging people that were outspoken and loud and were wearing bright colors and were just showing off their personality and their energy like this guy, this girl is too much. This is too much. And I really remember being affected by those words. And I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm also too much. And, sometimes parents do tell children, like, stop it, you're too loud. Oh, can you just like quiet down for a little bit? And I think many people have this experience. It's definitely a cultural thing, and many cultures have this strong element of judgment. I remember working with a Japanese client, and she told me it's extreme in Japan. Like you need to really fit the standards and the norm. And there's a lot of shyness that is like celebrated, humbleness that is celebrated. And I'm definitely not against humbleness, but it needs to be balanced with a very strong sense of confidence and self worth. Because, of course, we can always learn, and that's a beautiful thing, but it doesn't mean that we're always lacking or we're always wrong or we're always not good enough. So we need to get that other qualification, that other diploma. If we take that route, there's not an end. There's so much knowledge out there, like you will never be done studying and making yourself better. So the sooner we can recognize that we are enough, no matter where we are with our learning, no matter how many things we know, no matter what is our personality or our traits, when we fully accept that, yes, of course, we can enrich ourselves. And curiosity is a beautiful thing to have, but we're learning and we're growing out of a place of just fun, enjoyment, and celebration instead of a place of, and I've been doing this a lot even with self growth. It's a place of I need to fix, I need to change, I need to catch up. Look at these other people that've been doing self growth for like 20 years and been doing it for 6 months. Like I've got so much to change, to learn, to do. Let me just get at it. And it's a bit of a shame because it's so nice to be on a path and enjoy the path.
Yes, and you're really speaking to something that is very important when it comes to, I think, especially as women feeling confident, is this idea that that's arrogant and that it's very quickly associated with this like too muchness and this like you're taking up too much space and look at her like being full of herself, even though arrogance often really comes from like a deep sense of insecurity, trying to compensate for this inner feeling of unworthiness, while confidence comes from this place of security, right? Of self love, of acceptance, of inner peace. And from that place, kind of automatically, because you are accepting yourself and because you're loving yourself, it's actually really easy to love others, to appreciate others, and be humble because, of course, we don't know everything. But if you're confident, it's a lot easier also to feel that because it's okay, right? We've accepted that we don't need to fit all these different standards and all these levels of perfection. And I mean, there's so often, I think, Sarah, you've experienced this as well on like self development or spiritual retreats, that there's even sometimes this kind of comparing of like, oh, but I've been meditating for 20 years. And, there's like all of this game that is kind of still happening in these spaces, even like when people are there to let go of, I would say, the comparison and really finding inner peace. And I think it's such a gift I've been giving myself of truly loving myself in all these different ways to where I don't feel like I have to prove myself. Like I'm comfortable with myself. Also within like social settings, right? Where I was recently on a party where there were a lot of people who were maybe not really focused on this like inner work. And they were really just playing this game of like, who is the coolest? And I just felt like it was so silly, but it was also okay, because I could just observe it without judgment. It was just something I noticed and something I would have done in the past as well. And I just felt so at ease in not trying to play that game. Like I didn't care if they thought I was cool. And there are so many of these little things that the moment you start really accepting yourself more, you can relax so much more in all sorts of situations. I think it's good to acknowledge that we are allowed to take up space and we are allowed to feel good about ourselves. We're allowed to feel beautiful and we're allowed to feel successful, and that is not a bad thing. And that the people in your life who don't want to celebrate that or are afraid of your like success and just beauty are maybe not the people for you, and that's okay. But I feel like sometimes there's this part of us that wants to stay small, right? From that place of programming that feels like it's safer to not be noticed and it's safer to kind of fit in, right? And play all these different games.
Yeah. And it's so fun to notice this push and pull. For example, I had a young lady the other day on a session that realized when she was about 8 or 9 in school that she was brilliant. Like she was much faster than the other kids. She was much better. And that scared her to death because she thought, already I'm bullied because I have this surname and everybody was making fun of her surname. Imagine now if I turn in my paper an hour before everybody does, what will they think of me? I'm going to be excluded. I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. And I found it like so funny to see how she was trying to tune down her genius really and like fit in. But it was really hard at the same time because it made her stand out and be different in all other areas. So she was trying to mold herself in somebody that she was really not. And then she ended up in a depression. Why? Because the body says, this is not me. Like, erasing all my capabilities and my talent and my character means killing me. So her inner self, her life force was literally diminishing. She was feeling super tired and she was like, I don't know what I want in life. I don't know who I am. I'm so lost. Of course, you're so lost. You spent 10 years of your life trying to erase yourself and your greatness in order to fit in. So it's so funny how we kind of want to blend in. So we're afraid to excel and be successful and be like, and become super rich. A lot of people told me, I'm so scared of becoming rich because I'm going to be alone. So we're afraid of that. But at the same time, we crave it because we're not happy where we are. And we think, but if I'm like a little bit more successful, just moderately, then it's going to be better. And we are confusing our subconscious because it's either one belief or the other. Either I'm ready to be successful, I deserve it, I accept it, or I'm not ready to be successful, I want to be small. There's no gray area with our subconscious mind. And so many people have this programming of I need to be small, I need to fit in, I need to be just as everybody else. And then there's other people that feel already so small and insignificant and don't have a really high self esteem. So, how do they push themselves up? By putting everybody else down. That's why you get a lot of judgment and a lot of negative criticism. And that's what I understood more about the culture I was coming from. There's many people in Italy, but in also all other parts of the world that feel like maybe they don't matter. Maybe they're not good enough. And so when they comment on somebody else saying, ah, but look at them, they haven't done anything in life, they haven't achieved anything, it's implicitly like saying, but I have. That's why I'm judging them. So I need to push everybody else down so that I can kind of elevate myself up. And now when I see this behavior, I feel just so much empathy for the person doing it. Sometimes it's me doing it, and I need to try to feel empathy for myself and not judge myself for it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think it's so good to recognize that therefore also the judgments of others, which we can be so afraid of, right? And therefore we judge ourselves, and that they are often coming from the same place of not feeling good enough. And that we often have this idea that, okay, I'm not good enough and I'm afraid that others will find out. And there's like all these feelings around worthiness really that are so important to touch upon, because we often have this, we need courage, right? We need courage to not be critical. We need courage to not judge ourselves. It feels scary. Like for a lot of my clients, when I'm having these kinds of conversations, there's just this attachment in being critical and being judgmental of ourselves. And we have this like kind of abusive and just rude relationship with ourselves, but it feels way more uncomfortable to actually be kind. Like in a weird way, being critical has become our comfort zone. And even though it's not comfortable, it is so much scarier to just be kind. Like it's a weird feeling people get when we can invite you right now, right? If you're listening and you're being judgmental about anything in your life, whether it's your looks or something you did or something you haven't done, and to see like, okay, what if I can accept that that's okay, that I'm also just a messy human and doing the best I can with what I have, and I can be kind, like I can be my own cheerleader, I can let things go by accepting them. And there's like often a lot of resistance. It's like, no, I can't do that. There's just this feeling like, what will happen if I actually just let this go, or if I just forgive myself? There's this idea often that if we're just critical enough, we'll be able to fix ourselves, be better, be perfect, and then earn the love, right? But I think it needs courage, and it's good to mention this because I feel like it is easier to stay in the critical thinking and to stay in the overthinking of all sorts of things about your body, or all the things you should have done, all the things you should have said differently. Like we judge ourselves on so many things that others have no idea about, also don't care about, because everybody else is focused on judging themselves or others, but it's like there's so much focus on everything we're doing wrong and that somehow will end up making ourselves happier, but it doesn't. And I think it's such a relief it was for me to realize that there's no point, there's no goal, there's no mm, it doesn't work, right? Like it won't get you anywhere by just being rude to yourself, besides you feeling like you're being bullied by yourself. Like there's no end goal there that will actually make you feel better in the end. It just feels like shit. So really an invitation to be more kind, right? Because that is what we're talking about here is self-love is also allowing yourself the space and the grace to fuck up, to make mistakes, to not be perfect. I think I was talking with a client recently who felt like she did something wrong or didn't handle things in the way she expected herself to handle things, right? So there was this disappointment and kind of confusion. And therefore, it was justified to be critical and to feel ashamed and to feel guilty because, from like a logical perspective, she thought she did something wrong. And this touches upon something else as well, is that we as women often have this idea of, or this kind of tendency to really put the blame on ourselves and to feel constantly guilty about things, to question ourselves, even if the situation is actually caused by somebody else. But she just felt like it was justified to be critical and to feel unworthy because she did something wrong, even though she actually didn't. She was doing something great. She was setting boundaries. I think it's such a good example of how we're so focused on constantly judging ourselves, feeling guilty, and really justifying it. And that somehow that justification makes it okay, but it's okay and it's safe, and you have full permission to let that go.
And it makes me speak about toxic relationships. So relationships with a narcissist or a person that is manipulating you in any way. The way that this person achieves his goal of having control over you is by making you feel guilty a lot of times. And there would be no way to control a person if this person doesn't feel guilty. And that's why I think it's so important to cultivate self love as a strategy in life. Because as you were saying, many times it's not about a goal, it's about a strategy. And that's, for me, is really the essence of self love. It's not that like one day I will achieve it and I'm there. It's something that I want to strive towards every single day because it transforms my life in this beautiful way when I have it as a practice, as a strategy. So going back to that narcissistic, for example, relationship, if we're practicing this self love art during the day, we're trying not to judge other people, which means we're also not judging ourselves because how we can see if we judge ourselves is by looking at how we judge other people. There's no way you're judging everybody else and you're not judging yourself. It comes round to you because the reason why you're judging everybody else is that you need to place yourself in this imaginary hierarchy that you have in mind. So when you're judging others, you're like making this little list. Oh, okay, I'm a 5 out of 10. I'm surviving. That's why clients really have a hard time letting go of judgment because it's like letting go of their fake identity that is a ranking in an imaginary scale with where people have a little number and like are in a little line of importance. And so, if we stop judging other people, we stop judging ourselves. We let go of that sense of guilt of, but I could have done this thing better for this other person. But yeah, it's true. Actually, on Thursday night, I wasn't at home with him or her. I was having fun. Oh my gosh, maybe they're right. Maybe I am an egoistic partner. Maybe I am a mess. Maybe I am insecure. If we don't allow the person to make us feel guilty, they don't have that much of a grip on us. And when they start saying things like, you're never there for me, or you're a mess, or I'm helping you, you would be nothing without me. Those are phrases that come out of a narcissist very often. They have no hold, they have no grip. I had a girl in the session the other day that was in such a relationship where the partner was telling her, you're nothing without me. Don't you see? I've got your position because actually she was doing a job because of his help. You're doing this job thanks to me, and you're so successful thanks to me. And so she was feeling like, I've got nothing inside of me. You know, if he leaves, then I'm lost and the relationship is a mess. And I maybe hate him a lot of times, but I need him in order to survive. And that's exactly the situation that a narcissist would want to put you in. And if you have had a relationship that was narcissistic or you have been attracted to a narcissistic person, it is a really good thing to do to check a bit how are you doing with this strategy of self-love. And I know because I've experienced it, and it's really, it boils down to how much respect you have towards yourself. Because if you respect yourself, you're not going to tolerate that another person disrespect you, whether it's in an argument or whether it's literally the person you're living with every single day. If you don't tolerate that kind of treatment, then that's it. You're also not going to treat yourself like that. But if you're the first one telling yourself internally with your subconscious voice, am I good enough? Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm actually so messy. Maybe I'm not capable. Maybe I'm so lacking discipline. Then you're going to let another person tell you the same thing.
Yeah, I think we've both experienced this, Sarah. It's not that we're saying like you'll just be like, okay, yes, I agree that I suck, right? But it will still be hard when people are rude or disrespectful. But there will be this feeling that you need to prove to them that you are good enough, right? There's this feeling of proving and constantly like striving towards like finding validation from them instead of being like, if somebody is constantly rude to you, just realizing like, hey, I don't want this person in my life. Why are you speaking to me in this way? And if you would confront them about it and they're not like, oh, I'm so sorry, this was really not my intention, because of course we are all rude sometimes to people, which is also fine. We don't have to like beat ourselves up about that. But if it's like this consistent rude behavior, and if you talk with this person about it and they're also just dismissing it, right? Then you know, like, okay, I don't want this in my life. And I really experienced this myself where in the past I would really chase this validation from this person who was just not giving it to me. And I felt like the main goal was to make him see that I was good enough, right? Even though that was never going to happen, because that's how those situations are, right? There are these people that just kind of play with you in this way, or at least just never find it good enough. And it's the moment you really start loving yourself and accepting yourself, it's not about even fighting yourself out of the situation, right? It's just a no. It's like, excuse me, what are you saying, right? If somebody would be like really rude or abusive towards me now, I would just be like, what? Instead of like, oh my God, no, what can I do to like change how you feel about me? I would be like, please go away. Right. So it is really such an internal process, even though I feel like a lot of times I mean, especially in the dating world, but in all sorts of relationships, when you're not feeling worthy, there is this sense of wanting to prove it that you are. And there's a lot of focus on the behavior also of the other person, like, oh my God, he said this or she said that. But it's really about, why are you even still having this conversation with a person who is disrespecting you? Self love is really prioritizing yourself, right? Putting yourself in the first place. And we talked a little bit about this in the previous episode. I feel like there are so many small things that you can do in a day, and the way you're just approaching yourself. So, of course it's within relationship, but also just the relationship you have with yourself, is to choose things that feel really good, right? Like my brother, for example, he I was meeting him yesterday and he just texted me like, hey, I'm not in the mood to rush, so I'll be late, and it's so wonderful that he just puts his own well-being before the need to people please me, even though of course it's fine, like I can spend time with myself and I can just have a tea, and when he's here, and I think that's such a beautiful, simple example of how we can give ourselves more space and to choose things that are nourishing or that feel good and that maybe go against our programming. Like, I recognize a lot of what you were sharing, Sarah, about your upbringing. Like, I was not really allowed to watch TV, or it was not really a thing when I was growing up. And there was this belief that TV is just garbage, right? It makes you less intelligent. You should not waste your time on it. It's just not a good thing. If you want to be successful, don't waste your time there. And it really took me a long time to kind of give myself permission to watch Netflix and just chill out when I was like older. And especially doing that during the day. That was like a big no for me. I was like, no, that's I should not do that. That's really like I'm wasting my life if I watch a movie during the day. Just so silly. Like maybe you just want to, which is fine. And I think there are so many of these small things where we can allow ourselves to just be and listen to our intuition, listen to our needs, and really honoring our own needs. I feel like it's like the essence of self love. I feel like it's really getting to know your own needs, getting to know your own preferences, and really making that happen for yourself, whether that's within a relationship, within work, within your lifestyle, with food, with exercise, with rest, with any of these things. Like if you're desiring something or needing something, to really find a way to give it to yourself is such an act of love and nourishment that is the foundation really for a life that feels so much more aligned with yourself, right? Like we can't expect others to just magically know what we need. So it's up to us to get to know ourselves and really take a stand sometimes to protect that, to protect yourself, whether it is with these boundaries or with small choices you make about if you want to cook or not, and whether you want to go for a walk or do some more work. And it's not about the act itself because both can be the good choice, right? But it's really listening to yourself and what you need in the moment.
Exactly. I want to give some practical examples of what self love would look like in the lives of some people. So let's imagine there's a person that is single and they're on a dating app and they're texting this girl or this guy. The conversation has been quite cool for a couple of days, and there's like a little bit of, that nice rapport that has been built already. And the person is maybe waiting for a text of a good morning or a good night or a little, how was your day? And nothing comes. So the other person has totally ghosted him or her. And an act of self love at that point would really objectively look at the situation, empathize with your feelings. Oh, I'm feeling a bit let down. I'm feeling a bit sad, and maybe even partially grieving a bit this kind of beginning of a relationship that I had imagined, because you let go mostly of your own projections of how things would have developed. So you have this moment of sadness, and then you're like, but wait, okay, I'm feeling all of this, and it's super legitimate. But would I really want to get myself involved with a person that doesn't text me after like 3 days that we've been building up something and then he completely ghosts me? Good riddance. I got rid of a person that I would not want in my life. And that's self love because you're staying true to yourself, you know your worth. Or another example would be, this is from my client, the husband is doing these crazy works in the house and is getting everything messy and asks you, like, please help me. So the wife obviously goes there and does this great job of like cleaning his suit and the house. And then he goes like, "Oh, you haven't cleaned well. Do you see there's still a spot here? I mean, like, what are you doing?" And again, you empathize with yourself and you go like, okay, now I'm feeling a lot of anger because I had a big need for gratitude that has definitely not been met. The situation is outrageous. So you're like calming yourself down in the sense that you're validating your own feelings instead of being like, no, no, he's right. I don't deserve gratitude. I should have cleaned it better. No, you're being very objective about the situation. And then you're confronting him in a way that is really like honest and saying, look, I have been cleaning for the past 2 hours and I've really done my best. At the same time, when you say that I haven't done a perfect job, I feel hurt and I feel sad and I feel even angry because I would have a need for recognition and gratitude. That's really an example of self love because you're not shying away from confrontation. You're not thinking about how you could have cleaned better or done a better job. And you're not giving the other person power to manipulate you by making you feel guilty because of you not being perfect. And you're not even, reacting out of pure rage and saying you're a piece of shit for saying that. Like you're really, really embracing yourself and accepting all of you. And yeah, do you have any other examples, maybe even from your life? I mean, the one from your brother is fantastic. I'm going to adopt that too.
I definitely have been rushing less myself as well, which feels like such a pleasure. And I mean, we make choices the whole day, right? So many of them are from a place of love. And whether that is going for a yoga class because I feel like I need it, or not going to the yoga class because I feel like I actually just want to read a book. And so the day for me, I would say, is filled with these kind of choices. It can also be like normally I'm the cook or the chef at home. So it feels like it's kind of my responsibility to make sure there's food, and my partner does all the cleaning, which is an amazing deal. But maybe I'm feeling super tired. I had a long day at work, or maybe I just feel tired for no reason, which is fine as well. Maybe 8 years ago, I would still go to the grocery store, make all the food, like cook. And it felt like this responsibility to do this, right? But now I can just speak up for myself and be like, I'm really tired. Let's order a pizza. And that's also a form of self love. But on the other hand, maybe if we've not been eating the way I want to and things have felt kind of out of balance, I'm also not feeling as great. Maybe the most self loving thing is actually to do cook something healthy and make a bit of effort. It's hard for me to give an example that is very specific because it's so dependent on the moment, but maybe that in itself is an example that I really try to tune into what I need in the moment, and that these things can change. Like you can have the expectation of being super productive on a specific day, but then you wake up and you're just not feeling it. You're not feeling focused. Maybe you had a hard conversation. And then it's also okay to be gentle. But I would say also to have the hard conversations. If you feel underappreciated because you're not making the kind of money you want to actually have the conversation with your boss. Like, hey, I really feel like I deserve a raise. I've been putting out this energy and effort. And therefore, I feel like when it comes to self love, it is self care. Definitely with the little things, with making space to do a meditation, but it's also like on a bigger scale. I feel like that for me lately has been kind of the focus of like, okay, so it's really self-loving to think about the things you really want, like what would make you feel fulfilled and happy. Like doing our podcast, Sarah, is such a great example. I feel so uplifted and energized and motivated and inspired to do this, to share our thoughts, to help other people. And so it's a self-loving thing to make time for this and to think about these topics and to put in the effort, right? Because even though it is more effort than not doing it, it's something that really fulfills me. And I feel like that's kind of the conversation that sometimes people are not having when it comes to self love. It is very focused on like, oh, just buy the pretty jewelry, treat yourself. There's like this treat yourself culture from this place of self love, which I totally agree with. But it could also be very self loving to not spend money if you don't actually have that much, right? So it's like so much more nuanced situation. But I feel like going beyond the treat yourself movement, there is this like bigger life themes of your relationships, of the quality of your work. Like, are you happy with what you're doing? Like, someone recently was just talking about not feeling the energy to go find like a better job, even though they were kind of unhappy in the one they had, from a place of kind of like lack of trust that there could be something better, and just kind of this depletion and a bit of burnout and just like not really knowing. But maybe the most self-loving thing to do is, of course, take a break. Don't like be too hard on yourself. Don't push yourself too much, but also like see if you can have some conversations. Maybe you can get some help to see what jobs are out there. Like there are so many big things that really impacts your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health, that I feel like showing up for that is really what self love is. And so for me, that's really been putting energy into things that inspire me, but also not rushing when I am late for something to just text the other person like, "Hey, I'm gonna have another train because I don't wanna like I still wanna finish my breakfast in peace, or I wanna kind of just make a tea before I go, and that's okay." So it's also definitely like taking up space and communicating my needs. And yeah, I think that's for me it right now.
I love how honest and like how real that answer was. Because sometimes we kind of want to be very systematic in the tips we give or find like this little method that when you stick to point one, two, three, then tick you achieve, and that's great. But life is much more simple and complex at the same time. Because if I'm hearing you well, you were saying it all depends on how are you feeling? What is the most self-loving thing to do to you in the present moment, which, if you think about it, is super simple because in the moment, if we're able to tune in to what we want, we will know if it's a yes to the yoga class or if it's a no. But it's also a bit more distant from how we're living our lives now because we're kind of waiting for somebody to tell us that's the right thing, do it, buy it, go to the yoga class, don't go. But to find the answers in ourselves takes at first a little bit more of time and of like quiet because we need to listen in here and not out there. But when we do it, life starts to get much more simple and easy. And I always had a huge difficulty with taking decisions. Like I would be so stressed about having to take a decision that I would take it way in advance and just be like, okay, I'm choosing this. I don't want to hear anything else about it. I'm choosing it. I'm choosing it. I'm choosing it. Because otherwise, it was stressing me so much. And just lately, I've discovered that decisions are kind of taken for you by literally how your body is feeling and what your inner voice is shouting to you because your inner voice at some point will shout to you. Maybe it's because you've already taken the less right decision for you. And so you're hearing a strong no inside, and then you like go back and then you take the actual path that you're meant to take. But something will happen that will make you realize and you can keep ignoring the cues. You will end up maybe in depression. You're going to come to me and we're going to trace it back and you're going to make the right decision. So I've learned that life always gives us the chance to follow the best path, the one that is the best for us. And it's not whispering in our ear, that's the right path. It's actually shouting it to us. We just need to be open to trust that there's going to be a strong voice in us telling us this is the right decision to make. And the more we're connecting with each other and the more we're making those little decisions of, do I go to yoga? Do I not? And it's an experiment, you know, for 5 times, maybe you go and you're so tired that the 6th time you learn when I'm feeling like that, it's lying on the couch.
Yes, thank you for sharing that because it's a super good thing to highlight that it's not something you can do perfectly, right? Because sometimes we also just really don't know. Like there's like a 50-50 situation going on where you're like, yes, it might be great if I go and I'll feel a lot better, or I might go and I'll end up super tired and be like, nope, not doing that again. So it is really also a path of trial and error and really learning to trust yourself, right? I think it can feel so scary to be kind and to make your own decisions and to stand up for yourself and choose these things that are often going against our societal expectations, right? Because I think a lot of the self care that we truly need at the moment is more rest, more play, being more kind, being less judgy, really spending time with lovely people and not worrying too much about being perfect, about being successful. It's about speaking more kindly towards ourselves and being less critical and recognizing the patterns that are not serving us. But that's hard, you know. It's easy in a way, it's easier to go with the judgment, with the pressure, with all of the expectations and kind of joining everybody else in like this rat race. Um, so we definitely need some courage here to choose differently, and that requires trust.
Beautiful. I think those are beautiful words where we can come to an end. As you might have noticed, this was a part 2 to our previous episode. So we're going to stay faithful to our announcement for our next episode. It's going to be all around AI and whether AI can replace a physical therapist or a coach or a dietitian. And do you have any final words?
I'm excited to dive into that as well. I think there's so much more we can talk about when it comes to self love because it's the pillar of so much of what we do in our work as well. And to be patient is also so self loving. Like, even within this process of learning how to be more kind and to accept yourself more, we're gonna constantly fuck up. we're gonna, it takes time to change these patterns of thoughts. And every time you recognize that you're maybe not showing up in the way you wanted to, whether that is in changing your behavior or whether you should have eaten the fruit instead of ice cream, whatever it is that you feel like you should have done differently, to recognize that recognizing it is a good thing and not something to therefore fuel your judgment with. So to really be kind, especially when things are hard, especially when you feel like you have a reason to not forgive yourself, because self love is a lot easier when you're feeling energized, inspired, you feel good, you're doing all the things in the way you want them to do. Like, of course, it's going to be a lot easier to be acceptant, but we're really talking about unconditional love here, right? That we kind of wished maybe our parents had in a way that maybe you haven't received, but to also be kind when you feel like you don't deserve it is actually the place where things will start to change for you.
Beautiful. I love that. And one super last thing that I would like to add when you feel that you've recognized that you are judging yourself, welcome to the team. There's so many other people just like me and you that do it. And it's actually a great achievement just to recognize. I would personally celebrate you for recognizing. Maybe even today you had a little glimpse of awareness and you thought, yeah, I did judge myself this morning for how I looked. And I am judging myself right now for listening to this podcast instead of being, I don't know, running 10K. So be very gentle in just being happy that you have recognized that judgment because from here, everything is going to start to change.
All right, then let's close it here and we'll see you next time.
Beautiful. Bye. Till next time.